like you said, my name is Klint Skelly. I'm the WCM here out of the Pueblo office, and Steven is a lead Met here out of the Pueblo office, but he's currently in Kansas City helping facilitate the DSS boot camp. He's in the chat actually, but he's going to be in and out, he said. So I'm going to do my best to present his parts, and yeah, hope you enjoy. We had a unique situation, pretty much, gosh, all of June last year through July. Our convective season was, one of the year on record, our office. But, as like a capstone towards like the end of July, July 20th, we had a pretty high profile tornado, the Pikes Peak Tornado. It didn't go on the mountain, but it was right on the back side of it and roughly about 9,000 feet. But we just wanted to talk about the unique kind of forecasting, the setup. Obviously, high altitude tornado is going to garner a lot of attention from local media and even national media. And then, talk about the service that we did, messaging, and some things that kind of sparked from this, not necessarily from this, but some DSS opportunities that we've found just because of our unique kind of plains mountain interface here in Southern Colorado. So without further ado, that's our little emblem here, National Weather Service Pueblo. But on July 20th, 2023, we had several severe thunderstorms across Southern Colorado. We had a really nice setup for, severe weather in our region. High impact across the higher terrain and, areas that are normally not used to seeing these kinds of thunderstorms and impacts. This brought up kind of unique details of how do you message these unique, infrequent kind of events over areas that aren't used to seeing them. And spoiler alert, we use a lot of MIA concepts to get the full, I guess, understanding of the situation, and then we can use those MIA concepts to help message and provide hyperlocal DSS. Of course, in our in our area, we have mountains, which gives some challenges, of course. One being radar, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But at the end of this conversation, talk about solutions that we're looking into and have invoked for complexities of the mountain plains interface. So overall, here's what the day looked like. It doesn't include the far southeastern plains on that image on the right there. We're focusing more on the Pikes Peak region, but it was a busy day for us, of course. Confirmed tornadoes, large hail, large or strong winds across the entire I-25 corridor, not just Pikes Peak region. When I say Pikes Peak region, I mean Teller County, where Colorado Springs is, and then Teller County, it's a fairly populous area in the mountains just to the west of where Colorado Springs is. A couple images of what the day looked like. We have a mesocyclone on the left image. That was on the Pikes Peak Highway going up to the mountain. This is from Jessica Kellogg. I had to search her down on Facebook to get this image and get, get permissions from her to use it. But that's one of the coolest images I've ever seen, being above a mesocyclone on the ground, still looking down towards the Teller County. Seeing that is just remarkable. Some images from the damage survey. We'll see more at the end of the presentation, and then some large hail. And this Manzanola is just east of here in Pueblo. So just the scale and the width of where the storm tracked and the environment that it continued to be on, from mountains all the way down, going through Kansas, or going to the Colorado-Kansas border. Special thank you to Cameron Simcoe, Stephen Rodriguez, and Mikey G, Michael Garbarolio, probably call him by his full name. But they did the damage survey up in Teller County. Cameron and Stephen did. And then Cameron and Mikey, they went down to Baca County and did a different damage survey for winds. Not necessarily tornado, but a wind swath that produced some pretty high impacts. I was on overnights that day, so thank you guys for stepping up and doing the damage surveys. A little bit of background of the history of severe weather in just Southern Colorado. These are courtesy of Stephen Hodanish. He's a lead forecaster here at the Pueblo office. And then focusing on Teller County, which is in the top center, dictated by that 66 on the left image of all severe events from 95 to 2023. So 66 severe, LSRs, I should say, that have been given to our office, whereas on the number of tornadoes, 5. So it's fairly infrequent, of course. As for the scale, EF zeros, the most common thing, 1 EF1 in Teller County, and that was the Pikes Peak Tornado. But fairly infrequent that these kind of things happen in elevation like this. Notice if you go just to the east there in El Paso County, all severe weather events, 1,217. More frequent reports, probably due to a higher population. But the main thing I want to say here is everybody thinks that the best weather is out in the far eastern plains, but if you get the right setup, the I-25 corridor and even the mountains can get some interesting weather because weather doesn't really care where it forms as long as the conditions and the ingredients are there to create those impacts. Just as an anecdote, Stephen was talking about interactions with Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management during this day. I believe he was on the forecast desk that day, and he was talking to them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's all going to happen out east, right?" And this day, it happened to be, the setup was really primed for the I-25 corridor, Teller County, El Paso County. So he informed them, like, that's, as frequent as it does happen out east, these kinds of setups do happen, Teller County, El Paso County as well. So these are tornado warnings across Teller County, just more background of it. 23 warnings since 1986, 6 warnings in 2023. I think that, puts like a little cap on our severe weather season last year. One of the busiest that we've ever had. May 10th, you can debate if it's 1 or 2 different storms that produced the tornado, probably 2. So a lot that happened on May 10th, July 7th, July 20th, August 5th. It was never ending. It kind of, we get severe weather in Colorado, of course, but you kind of get a little glimpse of what it feels like to be a little bit further east during this last year, and it's busy. So, but we rarely issue these things for Teller County, and mainly because it's just a lack of low-level moisture. It seemed like last year we had very high dew points throughout a long period of time, being reinforced by thunderstorms redeveloping, creating outflows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On this day, it allowed for those high dew point air, moist air, to get up to Teller County and provide the correct conditions for tornadic thunderstorm. So a little bit of history about high altitude tornadoes in Colorado. This one's fairly undocumented, I think, but there's a Greenhorn Mountain tornado, May 8th of 2017. It was my second year around. Larry Walrod, lead forecaster who unfortunately passed, issued a warning on it. Verified it about 4 months later when all the snow melted, and a ranger came through and saw trees everywhere, and it lined up where our polygon was and where the rotation was located. It was remarkable to see him do that. But Mount Evans, which is, I guess, now formally called Mount Evans, it's called Mount Blue Sky now. It's up in Boulder, CWA. Longs Peak, that's our, and then Pikes Peak, of course, in our CWA. But, not too frequent that it happens, but of course it does happen. If you go a little bit further, it's span across the entire CWA. Rockwell Pass has 12,156. Ashley National Forest and the Teton Wilderness. So uncommon, but they do happen. And here's how we know that that wet mountain tornado happened. This is a sign that we have in our office, actually, but this sign exists in the Wet Mountains tornado timber sale from July 24th of 1971. So, pluses and minuses of having these high altitude tornadoes. One of the pluses is that you can get timber with all of the debris that it formed. Use it for firewood, use it for building, whatever you can. So I like the kind of holistic, natural kind of cycle there. Naturally falls over trees fall over, so you can go pick it up and use it. So talking about the setup, we had a ridge of high pressure located to the southwest and a large trough located to the northeast, large synoptic scale systems. But, with the ridge to the southwest, it kind of helped amplify, the waves passing over our area. And that ridge essentially was responsible for ushering in some stronger mid-level flow for that day. Going to 700 on the right there, there's a pretty distinct shortwave trough that's going to be coming through during the early afternoon. So overall, it's just saying that there's some large scale support from the synoptics that day. Going down to the surface, however, there's a high pressure located just over to the north over the northern plains and the northern Rockies, northern high plains and the northern Rockies. There's a surface trough situated over the Front Range, going down to the southwest mountains of RCWA and over the San Luis Valley. Strong convergence was in place. You can see if you squint hard enough in our CWA outline, there's some nice southeasterly flow, and then to the northeast, some nice northeasterly flow. So a lot of convergence, a lot of upslope flow directed towards our mountains in southern Colorado. The one thing, if you notice, if you look in northeastern, or I guess east central Colorado, there's some fog that's developed there. That's just indicative of how moist the air was. The fog was developing right before a severe day, and all of that air is being advected towards our mountains. If you look at the dew points, Pueblo had a 60 Fahrenheit dew point, La Junta 64, Lamar 64. That's all along the lower Arkansas River Valley and on our eastern plains. So all that air is being directed again towards our mountains. So pretty decent setup for moisture. And just to put some context to it, we don't need 60 dew points for severe weather. We've had tornadoes with 30 dew points, 40 dew points. So, having this extra air, moist air is, more than enough to set us up for a big severe day. SPC outlook for the day, slight and enhanced risk for our planes. That's slight nudged up on our I-25 corridor, 2% outlook for tornado. We had a 30% hatched over our eastern plains and a 50% hail outlook. And all of that verified quite nicely, as we'll see here in a little bit. But when we start seeing these kinds of things, let me go back to especially this using, Meso Analysis, seeing where that air is coming from, understanding our topography and how things work around southern Colorado. This is when we start ramping up. We started ramping up days before, but we start doing things the way that we do it here in Pueblo, and I'm going to discuss that a little bit. These are some graphics that we've set up, we've created just to describe what we do in Pueblo a little bit. The upper left, this is something that Stephen and I made quite a while ago when we were starting doing this HILSI concept. HILSI stands for high impact, low confidence events. So essentially recognizing something and then trying to just have open and continuous communication with our partners, with our public about, the potential hazards. In southern Colorado, a lot of it's mesoscale driven. I know every CWA has their challenges, mesoscale challenges, everything like that. I'm just explaining, the unique ones that we have with the Plains Mountain interface, especially being one of the few offices in Central Region that have it. But we have mesoscale issues every day, even the temperature. If you get a strong west wind off of our mountains, our temperature forecast will bust by 10 degrees. So, every day is kind of a high impact, or not high impact, but a low confidence kind of day. But, we do pretty well with our forecasting techniques. But at any rate, so the upper left is kind of the way that it flows with the HILSI, high impact, low confidence events. The lower left here is our flash flood methodology. And we've kind of adopted that for just operations in general, but ready, set, go kind of concept. So days leading up to event have more broader kind of, outlooks, trying to highlight uncertainties, pinpointing with an arrow where we think it's going to where we think the uncertainty is and what that could be, higher impact, lower impact. The morning weather stories are more, again, generalized kind of things, unless we have the higher confidence there. But leading up to the event, that's where we start downscaling our messaging. We use all the time mesographics that highlight smaller areas, confidence, timing, all that good stuff. And then, and the go is the flash flood. Of course, we want to extend the warning as much as we can. So that's why we use these mesographics to try and get there before the warnings go out. Say, this is our area of concern. Pay attention to this. But, once it happens, of course, take action when we start doing in this case, flash flooding is imminent, but we kind of do that for everything, severe weather, all that kind of stuff. And then that kind of goes into this more, the circular look on the right there, identify hazard potentials, continuous flow of information. And I think the big idea of this is we start large and end really, really small. But we go through every phase in between. So starting large with a larger outlook, break down maybe I-25 corridor, that's the issue. Break down even further, okay, El Paso County, Teller County, that's where the issue is going to be. Talk about confidence, all that stuff. So we found this with our partners to be, really, really successful. They really like it. And we're going to continue to do that. So, just to continue on that, this is kind of what it looked like. We had briefings that day. So Stephen put this picture of me in there. I didn't want it. It's in there. So I don't think it was during the briefing, but right before the briefing. The lower left is kind of the idea of like the middle frame of, what a mesographic would look like. And that day we had a couple different phases. The first phase being supercells over the I-25 corridor. When you hear that, especially over the I-25 corridor with our population maxima of Colorado Springs, roughly 700,000 people in the metro area there, that, things are getting serious that day, of course. But yeah, trying to be as, specific as we can with our impacts there. Context to it as well. So if you look at the final bullet point in that mesographic, not common to have these types of supercells this far west. Generally, the best air is out east. But again, we had a lot of reinforcing things, pushing, moisture towards our mountains there that day. One of the other things we adopt is the be curious mindset here. Stephen really coined this term, just being curious about if you see something in the data, starting to think about how you can message that data. It might be a high impact, low confidence event. So, we want to be as transparent as possible with the weather hazards in Southern Colorado. So being curious, really looking into the data, and then figuring out ways to message it and send it out to our partners in a way that people can understand. It's a challenge. It's fun. That's what makes it's the beauty of our job and what makes it really, really fun. So this is the environment initiation. The upper left-hand corner, greater than 2,000 joules per kilogram. There's no sin. Curved photographs all day. Really deep shear, 0 to 6 kilometer bulk shear values of 50 knots. And then as one of our chasers in the office says, this is the bottom right's the chaser cheat sheet there. So the 0 to 3 kilometer ML cape and surface vorticity lining up really, really well. And then, all that stuff kind of made us continue to message, right? Like doing our job, downscaling. So now we're able to, highlight Pikes Peak region, increased likelihood of severe storms capable of producing large hail, destructive winds. Tornado cannot be ruled out. We have medium to high confidence on that. And if you look at that arrow, that's real darn close to where that tornado actually went. So pretty proud of our office and the continuous flow of information on that day and throughout that entire season, to be honest, but just highlighting that day. So the initiation, what caused it? We had outflow boundary. I'm going to show you this GIF on the next image, but outflow boundary some morning, convection over northeastern Colorado, and that distinct trend of it going towards our mountains, and then that 700 hectopascal shortwave that was previously mentioned. I last second put this back in there just because it's kind of cool, and it shows, where the surface convergence from the outflows of the thunderstorms over northeastern Colorado were going towards, and they're heading straight towards, Park County, which is just west of Teller County, and in Teller County, of course. So here's what our warnings look like. It has that look, right? It's got the little the hook in the base reflectivity. It's clearly rotating in the base velocity. But one thing that's interesting about this is that this isn't from our Pikes radar. This is using KFTG up in Denver. This area in particular is really hard to see with Pikes. So if anybody could guess, we have Pikes Peak in the way up there. So Pikes Peak blocks a lot of what Park County has and Western Teller County has. So being cognizant of the topography and the impacts of that, led us to looking at different radars, of course, like everybody else does, of course, but look at using KFTG to analyze the storm. And that was the radar that really showed the tight couplet. Pikes didn't really show it that well. So just some, nuances that, that Pueblo has to consider when doing our, convective warning forecasts. But the thing is, it wasn't just Pikes Peak that happened. Fremont County there. Fremont County had some large hail from different thunderstorms. The tornado that was over Pikes Peak went over Colorado Springs and dropped 2-3 inch hail. And as they continued out to the far eastern plains, we thought we had some tornadoes. We issued some tornado warnings out there, but it ended up being just some straight line winds from, really, really strong mesocyclones that developed. No tornadoes fell, or no tornadoes touched ground, but there's a lot of evidence for some straight line wind damage. And Mikey Garbarolio, Cameron Simcoe did this damage survey there, which is really, really great damage survey. They estimated 80 to 100 mile an hour winds over a wide swath of rural southeastern Colorado. So, talking about the radars a little bit more, and when I mean this approach, I mean like the more MIA kind of concept approach is, we have to be cognizant of our area, using, the environment to help us issue our warnings is it's a really big portion. Like radar, of course, is a wonderful tool. We all know that it has its limitations. So using our situational awareness of MIA concepts and the Meso Analysis really helps us forecast for southern Colorado. So this is just kind of what it looks like. Pikes is located in northeastern Pueblo County and near Boone. It's really rural Pueblo County, but looking towards the northwest, there's Pikes Peak in the way. So that reduces the data sampling in especially in our 0.5 to 0.9. Once you get higher, it kind of goes over the mountain, which is great. But, if you look at KFTG, Boulder's radar, looking that way, we get a really nice vantage point. So we always use this when storms are developing in Park County and going into Teller County, which again is a relatively populous area. Woodland Park there, as you can see, that's notated sort of underneath that arrow there. There's a fair amount of people that live there. And then the rest of Teller County is pretty rural, but there's a lot of people that live in the mountains there. It's really pretty. So, but this is just another reason why, especially between the mountains and the plains interface, using MIA concepts to understand the environment that storms are going into, off of the mountain onto the plains. It's really crucial. So Stephen got some quotes from people while he was doing the damage survey up at Pikes Peak. A couple hikers there and some people from the East Coast offered their opinion because they were on the mountain the previous day. And, they heard the warning, took cover, which is great. Was hiking and received the alert. How far? I'd have to look that up, John. So we heard the warning and took cover, was hiking and received an alert on my phone. So that's all good stuff. But, this kind of hits the point here of the unique challenges of Southern Colorado. A lot of people like to come and visit our mountains. As much as we like them being up there, the East Coast people were on Pikes Peak during one of the worst severe weather days you can possibly be on Pikes Peak for. So, and even that Jessica Kellogg, as beautiful as that photo is, as much as I like it, she probably shouldn't have been up there. And there's no limitation of what we were doing for messaging that day. Like, decision makers understood what was happening, but it's still not reaching quite to the public. So that kind of makes us start thinking about what more we can do, because we still had people on a 14,000 foot mountain when we were fairly confident that there's going to be a supercell near. That's not great. But Pikes Peak, it attracts about 500,000 people every year. It's one of the most accessible mountains in all of Colorado. There's the Pikes Peak Highway, the Cog Railway, shuttle tours go up. You can take a biking tour. I almost did it once. Take you up on a van and you ride a bike all the way down. Really cool things that you can do. But it just means it's accessible. And 14,000 foot mountains that are accessible is not always the safest thing, because pretty high impact weather occurs down there, or up there. So this brings me into the last phase of the conversation. You thought this was just going to be about Pikes Peak Tornado. It's not. It's about service as well. But the unique opportunities that we've had in Southern Colorado to try and get that information before people get out into these wilderness areas. These are the definition of a UVP. These are people are vulnerable, especially our transient population that comes into Colorado. People from Texas, New Mexico people know it, I guess, a little bit, but people from Texas who don't deal with mountains, anybody from the East Coast coming and visiting, they might not know the climatology of diurnal thunderstorms, especially during the severe weather season and monsoon season. So we're trying to do as much as we can to get that information before they decide to go up or, recreate. The one in the middle there, we're starting, it's not quite operational yet, but we're going to have many of these things across the popular trailheads along the Continental Divide and even in the Pikes Peak region. So the one in the center is for the Bar Trail and the Manitou Incline. Manitou Incline is insanely popular. It's a hike that goes up 1 mile and 2,000 foot elevation gain. A lot of people like to use it for working out, but it's also a big bucket list check off. Like, I did the Pikes Peak Hill climb. You can go down to Manitou Springs, which is the closest city to that, and get a shirt that says that, right? It's like an accomplishment kind of thing. But if we can have point specific forecasts for the trailhead, the summit of the Manitou Incline, Bar Camp, which is a little bit further up on the trail of Bar Trail that goes all the way up to Pikes Peak, and then a peak specific forecast. I think that's doing a really good service. And Keith Sherburne, he's on the call right here, but we're going to be using some of the graphics that they made in Rapid City on these websites just below where it says this afternoon, Wednesday night, to have hourly forecasts for those points as well. So thank you for all your work on that, Keith, and thanks for science sharing for our office. But the idea is to have either physical QR codes on a sign and or laminated ones that can be taken off fairly easily. I'm going to let the partners decide what they want to do with that, but we're going to have these at the trailhead so you can scan it, get your forecast, get your hourly forecast, and then you can make your decision if you think it's safe enough to go on top of the mountain or not. Because as we all know, the trailhead forecast is very, very, very different than what happens at the mountaintop there on the peak. And then just to continue to show what we've been doing in Pueblo on the right hand, the Lake Pueblo wind risk tool. It's a probabilistic kind of thing that we're doing specifically for Lake Pueblo. We had 8 people die in 2022 due to Virga outflow, things that we can barely see on radar, producing 30, 40, 50, sometimes 60 mile an hour wind gusts out of green echoes on radar. So the idea being, let's give you the best kind of outlook we can, try and give you as specific as possible time ranges, and then the likelihood of winds being greater than 30 miles an hour. 30 mile an hour being, small craft advisory kind of level thresholds. Lake Pueblo's not big enough for that, of course. So, just getting that, because we still get white caps on there with outflow boundaries and strong winds. So we had a lot of capsized boats. Anyways, Lake Pueblo State Park, they put 8 signs around the park, and it's gotten pretty good use. People go up, scan it, determine if they want to take the risks, or if the risks are low enough to go onto the lake that day. So all of this, this is, every CWA has their challenges. This is just how we're trying to figure out how to better message for our mountain plains interface and the challenges that we have here with being in the high desert. So more unique opportunities. When we have a tornado like this, it garners like a lot of attention, right? Local news wanted to do interviews all day while Stephen and Cameron are on the mountain, doing the damage survey. There's a whole bunch of, facilitation between them and the local broadcast Mets to get an interview and talk about this. But this is the ultimate way, I think, to really hit at safety in these, in the recreation industry here in Colorado. So, thankfully, this Pikes Peak tornado didn't really, all it hit was trees. No one was in danger. So this is like the best case scenario for us. A high profile storm that didn't do much. As for damage, for that storm in particular, of course, it damaged the far eastern plains. But that storm didn't really do too much. It was a tornado on Pikes Peak. It's amazing. It's a remarkable kind of thing. So we're able to push a lot of safety through interviews. And then, so you can see Stephen there in the bottom doing an interview with KOAA right in front of Pikes Peak, America's Mountain Shop. And then the bottom right hand, I was even on the Weather Channel. And so that just continues to, spread the knowledge that, these kinds of storms can happen wherever they want to, as long as the environment is good. So great opportunity for the Pueblo office to share the good word of the National Weather Service and weather safety in general. And so here's some pictures from the damage survey from Stephen and Cameron. Stephen was joking that the last damage survey that he did was at 600 feet. And so he was able to enjoy this one, especially because it didn't really damage or affect people's livelihoods. So just enjoy the views, determine if it was a tornado, the intensity of the tornado, and all that good stuff. So really unique opportunity that we got to have. We got here in Southern Colorado. So overall, the July 20th, 2023 event was a high profile event. We had all of the ingredients for an mountainous I-25 Eastern Plains severe day. And, I thought our office did a really good job, implementing, our strategies, which, we had to work through, to get through with like culture kind of related things of like shifting paradigms, working with each other to try and figure out the best way to message these high impact, low confidence events. It was really a culmination of a lot of work that went in our office to, try and message this as best as possible. Again, super, super proud of the office for how we reacted. And then even afterwards with the follow-ups, damage surveys, interviews, we did an AGOL story map, and we just highlighted the storm as much as we could. With that, 35-minute presentation today. I'll take questions. There's our contact information, of course, but yeah, let me have it.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or put it in chat. Great talk, Klint. That was awesome.
Thank you, Mike. And John, I'm going to copy and paste your question from chat. So I'll send you a follow-up if he's still on there. Yeah, Kurt.
I'll ask a question. Don't want you to go questionless. That'd be sad. Define gravity waves. No, just kidding. Question for your office. I don't think it would have been as much of a factor in this event, but did critical incident stress management, or CISM, have any impact in your operations, or could you have noticed any benefits from it, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think, at least it wasn't identified, that really was an issue in our office. I think obviously always that kind of support is welcome. I don't think we used any of that because I don't think it really, these storms didn't truly like cause massive kinds of damage. So no, I think it was just a high impact day that I think we've been preparing for over and over again. So yeah, I don't think so, Kurt.
Okay.
But we could use it
Didn't
always.
seem like those events, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Keith.
Hey, Klint, really good talk. I'm trying to think of a good way of formulating this question, but as a WCM, knowing that these risks are out there, and even if you communicate with folks and let them know of the risk, there's still going to be folks going out and hiking. Like, how do you reconcile that? I think from kind of a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint, knowing that we can provide them with the best information, because there are a number of times that I go out on hikes, I'm coming back to the trailhead and other people are going out when there's thunder ongoing and there's a storm coming. So how do you reconcile that as a WCM?
Yeah, well, so yeah, that's a really good question, because my goal is to give them the best possible information. Our office's goal is to give them the best information as possible. That's why we're trying to find new ways to message it, work with our local partners to essentially give the forecast right there in front of their face so they can make the best decision possible. These websites that we're building, the ones that you're helping build, Keith, we're going to have climatology on there. Granted, it's going to be really hard for a person who's about to go on a hike and scan their QR code and look at it and be like, oh, the climatology is this, but we want that information to be present. The thing is, like, there has to be some sort of accountability, I think, with the person who's going to go out hiking. The best that I think we can do is get it to every place that they might stop before going to the mountains. We're working with Lake County. Leadville is located there. It's the highest incorporated city in the United States, 10,000 plus feet. They have outdoor shops that provide, energy GUIs or something like that before they go out. Have a QR code sign there. Let them know that the forecast is right there in their hand, and have Mount Massive, Mount Elbert, all these popular trailheads that they might be going to, and have a little hub there. Scan it, and make their decision that if they want to go out that day or not. Hopefully in the outdoor shop they have a little bit more time to make their decision, but it's also important to get it at the trailhead as well. We've identified issues with that, cell phone service being an issue, so we're going to try to just focus on areas that have cell service, but just presenting as much information everywhere as possible, in most places possible, just so they can make their own decision.
Got it. Yep. Thanks, Klint. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Keith.